kids, Deb and I would try to outrun the waves, but I would always end up diving under them. I'd swim deep because I could withstand the pull of the tide. But Deb was always safest at shore. From here on out, I'll face the depths by myself.
Deborah is always safest at shore, and from here on out, Dexter will face the depths by himself. It's fun to hear about Dexter and Deborah's family vacations, right? The way Deborah was chasing Dexter down the beach, the fact that Deborah would never take off her flippers when on the beach, that seems about right. The sand in the sheets, seashells on the walls, man, it all sounds so normal. Well, except for the fact that her brother was a sociopath who was being trained by her father to kill bad guys. Yeah, except for that bit of business. Welcome to the Dexter Wrap-Up Podcast for episode 705, Swim Deep, written by me, Scott Reynolds, directed by Ernest Dickerson. I'll tell you what, it's a good time to be able to work with Ernest. Here's what we're doing here. The hope of this podcast is that we'll give you a more behind-the-scenes look into how we make an episode of Dexter. So here's the plan. We'll talk a bit about the episode at hand, Swim Deep. Then we're going to pop over to Daniel Licht's studio, he's the composer of Dexter, to discuss the music of the show and each of the main characters' themes in specific. It's going to be an eye-opening experience. Or would that be ear-opening? Okay, anyway. Then we'll end this whole shebang by having Scott, Buck, and Wendy West answer the questions you asked on Facebook and Twitter. Questions about episode 704, Run, as well as get to know Wendy West a little better. She's one of those people that are good to know. Anyway, let's talk about 705. Starts off with Dexter trying to get his life back in order. And it's telling that he starts out on his boat, the slice of life, trying to clean it, keep it all neat and tidy. It's one of those intersections in his life that tie his secret life to his public life. So he's out there trying to tidy it up, a little, I don't know, like Lady Macbeth washing her hands perhaps. Except, of course, Dexter claims he has no conscience to speak of. And yet there's Harry, announcing Dexter's worst fears. Now that Deborah knows the truth about who Dexter is and is choosing to try to live with it, his fear is that this new open and, somewhat honest relationship with Deborah will eat away at her until she rots away inside. So if Dexter could feel guilt about anything, it would be about the destruction of his sister that he cares so much for. But then, Dexter finds some blood on the boat. And we as viewers know who it belongs to, Lewis. And just like just about every guy on the planet, Dexter's almost glad to be able to put his worries about Deb, something he has no solution for, mind you, on the back burner so he can deal with something he knows about, blood. And he knows how to deal with that. It's easier to get some swabs of blood and figure out who was on his boat than it is to dwell on these problems he's having with his sister. But then the hits just keep on coming when at the station, Deborah hears word from Asuka, who calls her his lady boss, that LaGuardia is processing a broken blood slide. Dexter's lost blood slide from the church, Travis's blood on it, at a private lab, which, leads Deborah down the rabbit hole. When then she sees Deborah, we then see Deborah begin the slippery slope of compromise as she lies to LaGuardia, her own police captain and sometime friend, to get in on LaGuardia's investigation into who the real Bay Harbor Butcher is. On a side note, while I was there on the set for the scene, Jennifer asked for a little help here. She was wishing, she talks about it in the first podcast, actually. She was wishing for her own voiceover to help, guide her as to what she was thinking throughout all these scenes with LaGuardia and Dexter and others. And, obviously this is something we can't do. The show's called Dexter, not Deborah. And she knew that, so she had an alternate suggestion for this moment that I think worked out really well. Could she put her very remarkable potty mouth to use to express how she was feeling? So on the day, we pulled an audible as I ran up to my office and wrote a new scene, the scene where she gets in the elevator post talking with LaGuardia and discovering what she's up to. And thus you get a rather historic moment, possibly the most cussing in the shortest amount of time in one scene in the history of television, a truly epic and crass moment. But it is true to her character and expresses her feelings in the moment about Dexter and the crap he's putting her through now that she knows what he is. And her frustration that she is swept up in this tangled web of lies and kills that Dexter has put together and enmeshed her in. I mean, you could feel her anger at Dexter in that moment. It's very honest and real. Anywho, Deborah, despite her brother telling her to leave LaGuardia alone, dives deep into the investigation, becoming Cagney to LaGuardia's Lacey. I don't know, maybe it's the other way around. I'm not. Who would be Cagney? Anyway, Deborah is able to, for the first time, save her brother's ass when she steals a piece of evidence, the picture of Dexter stalking the wedding photographer, which is a pretty fun picture. And a side note, it's one of the crew's wedding. That was fun. He was photoshopped in, though. Dexter was. Anyway, she steals that picture from right under LaGuardia's nose. But at the end, when she hands it over to Dexter, she has to look away when he destroys potential evidence that Dexter is the Bay Harbor butcher. That's there at the end. And while this occurs, while this is happening, Dexter realized that Isaac Serco is after him. You know, I particularly love the moment when OCD Dexter is walking up to his apartment and he sees that his curtains have been moved. Like, only someone like Dexter would notice something like that. And of course, sitting on the other side of that curtain is Isaac. Now, we don't often suggest this, but I'll suggest that, you go back to that scene and pause it on the tarp and the tools and think about the lengths that Isaac was willing to go through in his, it's like hostile-like torture. He was ready to meet out on Dexter for killing Victor. There's some really gnarly torture stuff on that tarp. You might like it. It might make a good screensaver. I don't know. So Dexter leads Isaac to a local cafe to figure out who and what Isaac is, which leads us to what was almost the alternate title, Hello, Handsome. And I love that moment when Isaac gets Dexter in his sights across the harbor and he says it in his impeccable British accent. So anyway, once Dexter realizes the trouble he's gotten himself in and his sister in, Dexter then has to go to Deborah to get her to hide away in a no-tell motel to protect her from this murderous gangland boss. There was a pleasant surprise for me on set when Dexter and Deborah in the parking garage. Remember that? Deborah, Jennifer, violently shoves Dexter in the chest in frustration when she realizes how good of a liar Dexter Morgan is. And honestly, who wouldn't do the same thing when their brother responds, she asks him, "Are you telling the truth?" And he says, "I think I'm telling the truth." So Deborah agrees to stay in a motel with her brother, which is also slightly awkward when you know how Deborah feels about her brother. And if you look closely, to make it even more awkward, our amazing set designer, Jessica Kinder, give her a round of applause. Yay. She put a coin-operated bed vibrator next to each of the beds. It was that kind of hotel. This is a gross motel. Or it's awesome. I mean, it's up to you. But another fly in the ointment is when Dexter and Batista have to question Hannah McKay, which leads them to dig up a pair of bodies that Hannah claims Wayne killed on his own. And that brings us to another fun moment of the season when Dexter and Hannah talk about their first crime scenes. They're standing there waiting for the bodies to show up. And Hannah says, I'm not even going to try to talk like her because it would just be embarrassing and horrible. She says, "Look at us telling stories about blood and gore like we're on a date sharing our first sexual experience." It's like, even at that moment, Hannah knows that this will make Dexter uncomfortable, which he clearly is. He doesn't have the tools in his toolbox to handle something like this. Like on the boat, with the blood that suddenly shows up, something else enters the scene and allows Dexter an escape from what he doesn't know how to handle. Dexter hears the cadaver dogs barking, the sound, which means that there's bodies out there. And never in his life has been more relieved to hear that sound than he is then. And you got to admit, Hannah wins that round. Then after studying the bodies, Dexter realizes that he realizes that she lied about her involvement in the murders that she blamed on her former kill spree accomplice Wayne Randall. And thus Dexter knows who his next victim may be, Hannah. After all, she has immunity from prosecution on those murders. So technically, Dexter would not be stealing away a case from the police, and he wouldn't be lying to his sister. She's all his. Meanwhile, Dexter has to find a different way of getting rid of Isaac Serco, because you can't really go kill a mob boss. I don't know if you've seen other mob movies. A lot of times you kill a mob boss, everybody comes after your ass, and I don't know if Dexter really wants that. So he sets up Isaac in the Colombian bar. And can I just say what an amazing job Ernest Dickerson did shooting the scene where Dexter imagines what Isaac did in the bar against that series of badass Colombians. It's both cool and terrifying, completely cinematic, but it does put Isaac behind bars. And, on a side note, if you want to hit that bar, it's the White Horse on Western in Hollywood. It's a good joint. And then there's a straw that broke the camel's back, that scene between Batista and Deborah at the end of the episode. She was able to, this whole season up to this point, she's able to deal with lying to LaGuardia, lying to protect her brother, stealing evidence, but it's this moment that does it for her. When she's forcing her best friend, he's almost like a brother to her. I mean, they've said that before, Batista, forcing him to back off a case that she knows he's right about. It's that lying to him that this was it for Deborah. She couldn't do this anymore. She said basically telling a good cop that he's doing the wrong thing doesn't work for her. So that led her to in the final scene to tell Dexter, that thing we heard, to tell Dexter that she plans to live a life of don't ask, don't tell, which you know how that works out not so well. It's a life where Deborah tries to live a life where it's best that Dexter is just out of reach, just like their childhood. And this is something that Dexter lives into when he lies to Deborah about the evidence he found that Hannah's actually a murderer. She asks him, is there anything else? And Dexter says, nope. It's for her own good, Dexter figures. And he's able to start prepping to kill Hannah, sort of a simple solution to get her out of his life because, she's bugging him a little. So from here on out, Dexter will try to face the depths of what he does by himself, which sounds good on paper. I'm not sure it'll be as easy as that now that he's tasted this sort of intimacy with his sister. But I'm sure he'll give it the old college try, right? What's a college try? I don't know. Anyway, enough of this recapping. Let's go hit up Daniel Licht at the studio. Maybe listen to a little music, talk about how he does what he does, composing the soundtrack to Dexter. We can figure out how he does this magic on screen. So let's go check that out. So we're sitting here with Daniel Licht, composer extraordinaire of Dexter. You've been here since the very beginning, right?
I have.
Yes, and to quote, sort of quote, I don't even know if it's the right quote, but Michael C. Hall has said about you, I've heard, that you create the oral landscape of Dexter that is actually a whole nother character on this show. And I would completely agree. I mean, you bring about moments. There are moments that I remember more because of the music, I think, than because of the visuals sometimes. And the visuals are great too, by the way. But you evoke this thing, this sort of playful dread that's not like in any other show. So I just want to say thank you for that. You're a good man, Daniel Licht.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah. So how did you become a composer? How did this all happen?
Oh, well, I started composing when I was probably like 11 or something. I started writing little piano pieces, and I didn't know what to do with them. I was just
composing for what? Like, just making music.
Just making music,
oh, right.
Writing little pieces on piano and putting them on, pieces of paper and like not doing anything with it. Then I got into jazz for a while, and then I got into world music, and I was studying world music. And
yeah, you use a lot of crazy instruments on Dexter, things I wouldn't even know existed,
and some things that don't even exist yet.
You're like, yeah.
But so I was I've always been eclectic, and it wasn't until I actually went to see a friend who was doing a film scoring session, Christopher Young, a great composer. And I saw him, he was here at Los Angeles. He was doing a recording session with a Japanese percussion ensemble, some strings, some vocalists, and just a bunch of random whatever. And I'm like...
How old were you then?
I was, 20-something.
Okay, all right.
And I was like, okay, I get it. This is what I need to do. This is where I can have all these diverse... Because I've studied Balinese gamelan, I've studied Indian music, I've studied all these different kinds of musics.
Wow.
But they never had anything to do with each other. Like, what do you do when you learn Balinese gamelan riffs if you're at a jazz jam session? It's like, what do where do you put it?
Yeah.
People go, what's that weird scale you're playing? That's not bebop.
Miles Davis would never do that.
I actually met Miles Davis. That's another story. He gave me a cooking lesson, though. But.
What? Okay, now you can't just throw that out there. What did he teach you to cook?
He taught me to cook chicken, actually. He's like...
Chicken?
He said, he said that, what musicians have to do is he had a crock pot. He says you take a crock pot, you throw a chicken in it, you throw some cumin, and you throw some garlic into it. You turn it on low, you go do your gig, and you come home at like 4 a.m., and you've got dinner. That was a Miles Davis cooking lesson.
Wow.
Anyways, so I was thinking of doing like a Miles Davis cookbook, but it only had one recipe in it. You think it'll sell?
Be a pamphlet. Who knows? Depends on what you charge for it.
Anyways, we're getting off topic here. It's too soon in this to get off topic, right?
No, it's good. It's good.
Okay.
It's a podcast, man. We do what we want. We're on the fringe, man.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, how'd you become a composer?
So it really was. I finally realized that this was something that I could use all my different interests in and get paid for it. That was the other. It's nice to make a living.
Yeah, it's tough to make a living as a musician, I hear.
Balinese gamelan doesn't pay well. Let me tell you.
Not even in Bali?
Not even in Bali.
So, what was your first? What would be your first movie or TV show, or what was the first thing you composed for?
The first thing I composed for was an NYU student film.
Okay, so that's where you went. You went to NYU?
No, I didn't. I just I lived in the East Village, and
okay, so you answered one of those tear-offs or something.
Tear-offs, yeah, and it was a vampire film. It was a lesbian vampire film.
Well, you know, those are the best kind.
Absolutely. Anyway, so I think that probably got me started down that particular dark path.
So you're sort of drawn toward. I don't know. Some people say it's gothic, but I don't think what you do is gothic, really. On Dexter, anyway. Maybe on other things. Maybe on lesbian vampire movies.
Oh yeah,
probably it has to be gothic.
It has to be, absolutely. Yeah.
Balinese gothic.
No, they didn't make much Balinese in that particular movie. But no, there's gothic elements to it. Dark minor chords, but not.
Right.
It's not a lot of huge. Gothic music sometimes is huge.
Right.
Maybe on season 6, some of it got huger and more gothic because it was
sure,
taking place in a church and it was about God and
right.
all that kind of stuff.
The Doomsday Killers.
Doomsday Killers, yeah. But I don't know what style it would. I think that it could be described as music of the macabre, but coming out of sort of a Kurt Weill vein.
Okay.
More like it's a smaller ensemble feel.
Yeah. And there's something sort of childlike about the Dexter stuff to me a little bit. I mean, I guess maybe it's what do you call the
vibraphones?
Yeah.
I use a lot of toy pianos and vibraphones.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, to sort of hint at that, at who Dexter is at his core, sort of. He's sort of undeveloped in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No, I mean it's and it's like toy like music boxes. They're always creepy. That's
true.
a creepy sound. Little plinky sounds are always creepy against dark, low chords.
Yeah. I wonder why that is.
I think because we're all, must be from childhood fears or something.
Yeah, yeah. It's that because that thing would pop up.
That's exactly what it is.
Scare you, and then you'd have to keep doing it again and again. Huh,
yeah,
that's interesting. And then you play it backwards.
That's you got to the seat of my creativity. It's the Jack in the Box.
It's Jack in the Box. Though those many years ago. And then after doing the lesbian vampire movie, did you sort of were you sort of drawn to doing horror at that point? Because a lot of the stuff you've done is creepy, is horror sort of based. Are you a big fan of horror movies or?
Yeah, I have been. I'm more a psychological horror.
Right.
I prefer I prefer the movies where you don't see,
right,
more like some of the Japanese horror films, that style,
right.
and Alfred Hitchcock and all that. I'm not. Yeah. I can't say that I spend a lot of time going out to see, graphic slasher films, but I do like, or I like big, horror like Omen or Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Those kind of things where it's like supernatural kind of.
So growing up, you'd see these movies and you would experience the music. Do you feel like in a different way than other people, or? I
don't think so.
No.
I wish I could say that is the case, but
I wish you could too.
Yeah.
No.
But I think no, I just really enjoyed them,
Yeah.
But and part of it was just happenstance. That happened to be the first film I got offered. And the other part is that I was friends with Christopher Young, and Christopher recommended me for my first film out here.
Who's Christopher Young? By the way, give me a little.
Christopher Young is a composer,
right?
Composer of Hellraiser, the original Hellraiser, and he's considered one of the the greatest of the recent horror film composers. He did The Fly 2, Hellraiser.
Yeah.
Trying to think of what else he's done. I mean, he's done a bunch of films, but in the horror genre, he's, obviously the first 2 Hellraisers, those were kind of groundbreaking in certain ways.
Yeah, very.
It was, really original music.
Very sexual and scary, and
the
pinhead and that guy with the teeth.
Yeah. But anyway, so Chris, recommended me for my first film, so.
Is he sort of your mentor in some way?
He was my mentor. Yeah.
I
worked for him when I was first moved out here, and he's definitely my mentor. Yeah.
And so he, that's great that he passed things, helped you get other jobs.
Yeah.
There's sometimes, And I've heard stories of when people find great assistants that
They don't want them to.
they don't want them. Yeah, they don't necessarily want them. They want them to succeed, but they sort of want to keep them as great assistants.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, so that's
No,
great.
no, he was great. He was very generous.
So then, how did you land Dexter? Because had you done a lot of TV before that? Because TV is a whole different beast than movies.
Well, I had done a bunch of horror films, and
Right.
I did one film for a producer for a Disney film called "Don't Look Under the Bed" that was like a comedy horror film.
Right.
It wasn't really a horror film. It's, if Disney could be horror,
Yeah,
that would
be
be
scary ones. You know?
it had some scary elements. But anyways, he went on to do a TV show and brought me along to do it, and it was broad comedy. And I had never done that before. So that was actually my first television show and my first comedy.
Which is entirely
Straight
different
comedy.
too, huh?
Yeah, I had to relearn how to work. I mean,
Because with comedies, sometimes the music it should be adding to the laughs, right?
well, I mean,
Sitcoms,
one thing that
especially.
I learned is that, I had done dramatic films. I had done a lot of, heavy dramatic films as well, not just horror films. But about drama, you build the tension, you build the drama.
Right.
But with comedy, you build the tension and then you have to break it.
Huh.
So it's like very quick. You don't hold tension for more than like 5 seconds with
Right.
comedy because it's not funny.
So it's about the release, basically.
It's about the release, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So the producer had to keep saying, no, stop being, you're too dramatic, too dramatic. It's like, I didn't know how not to be dramatic,
Right.
It's like, you have to sort of like retrain yourself. It's like going from being a racehorse to a jumping horse or something.
Right,
You don't,
right.
You don't run through all the things.
Yeah.
You go over them gracefully.
So then you got on Dexter.
So
Right.
this is all leading somewhere.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean
There's
to
actually a
push the
curve
story.
to this story.
Okay. I'm along. Let's do this.
So I think one of the reasons, so I did this straight comedy, and I did a bunch of comedies, and I had some Latin music, and
Right.
I think that's one of the reasons I got Dexter.
Oh,
is
yeah?
because I had the horror thriller stuff, but I also had the comedy,
Right.
because as part of Dexter's very, very dark comedy.
Yes, I agree. Yep. And very Latin also.
And the Latin element,
yeah, the Cuban Miami sort of vibe.
Yeah. So that was very lucky for me because it's really just great to be picked to be on the show. I mean,
Yeah, you've
they
been
could have
fantastic.
They could have picked a lot of people,
So is it like how do they do that? Is it like you had to send them some music, or your agent sort of made this all work out, or is it like with actors they have to audition, with writers they read your script and say, yeah, let's try this guy out? How's it work with a composer?
Well, you send them music
Right.
first,
Which makes sense.
yeah, and then basically you go in and they want to make sure you're not too weird.
A musician weird?
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
That doesn't happen.
Basically,
And then you got it, I guess, right? Did you have to
Yeah,
meet with Clyde, or was
I
it
met with
Showtime?
Clyde.
Okay,
yeah, Clyde and Sarah. I think Sarah was maybe on the phone.
right. And Clyde Phillips being the showrunner of the first 4 seasons of Dexter.
Yeah,
And he's also a musician, so he
Yes.
had some very strong ideas about music. And I was a part of. Was the first couple seasons I was an assistant, so I'd come up here all the time
yeah,
and watch you two work.
yeah.
Yeah. But it worked out. It worked out great.
It did,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. And that's how some of these. What I'd like to sort of talk about here is some of the themes that each of the characters have. That's something that I find sort of fascinating about
Yeah.
Dexter. Whether they're big bads or people like Rita, everybody has their own themes. So maybe you could play a couple of the themes of some of the characters, and we could talk about them. What do you
Sure,
think?
absolutely.
So maybe, of course, considering the show is Dexter,
Yeah.
we should do the Dexter theme. What do you call that theme? It's the
Well, Dexter has a few themes because
Right.
it's his show, obviously. I think it's in his contract, actually. No, just joking.
give me 6.
6 themes for me, please. And they have to be in 12 different keys.
Must be sharp.
Must be sharp, no flats. Wait a second. That's a musical joke for you guys out there. I guess what I'll play you is I'll play you the first theme, the first music that you hear in the pilot.
Okay.
And basically it sort of set the tone. And then I think even Clyde said, wow, he said in various interviews, they kind of like, oh, that's it.
Oh, wow, yeah.
When he heard that first cue, he's like, okay, Dan gets the show. So what I did was I used a combination of kind of primitive-sounding hand drums, or hand drums that have a primitive sound in certain ways. And I mixed that with strings and piano, and with synthesizers and cutting sounds, like with wine glasses and bowing on vibes, and screechy sounds. Mm-hmm. So that it kind of has everything that Dexter has. The piano's kind of the emotional aspect. And then the primitive drums has always been the kind of like his drive.
Right.
When Dexter gets out of control.
It's the dark passenger in
the
some
dark
ways,
passenger.
Right? Yeah.
When he whenever the dark passenger goes into action mode, you have these kind of driving hand drum, ensembles playing.
Right.
So this is like the first theme, and it. Hold on, I'm going to turn around here. So this is the first music you really hear. And the voices, the spooky voices too, the women's voices is kind of the haunting quality.
And that high-pitched sort of sound is the wine glasses, or that?
It's wine glasses and piano.
Oh, wow.
These are those minor triads going.
Tonight's the night.
Hello, Michael.
We have the rights
And
for
it's
this?
going to happen again and again.
It's a podcast.
Okay.
Has to happen.
The dark strings and the percussion comes in.
Nice night. Miami is a great town. I love the Cuban food. Pork sandwiches, my favorite.
Anyways, you get the
I'm
idea.
hungry for something different now.
Yeah. That was like our first introduction of Dexter.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could see him hunting on the, is it the Strand, or what do they call that area?
The Strand.
South Beach.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
that was our first introduction, and then
first introduction, and then later, what you have comes out in later episodes is the blood theme. The blood theme is has always been more of it's a kind of a sadder theme, but it's also I kind of think of it as being like his it's like his werewolf theme. It's like
right
where he's kind of the moon, pining at the moon about it's sort of bringing out the blood in him, but it's also kind of like he's not happy about it. It's him fighting the uncontrollable part of himself.
Right. Let's hear a little bit of that.
And I always use it sort of like, Scott, as a writer that you never write what people think, right?
We hope not.
You hope not.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to do that, right? But a composer, we could do that.
Yeah.
We write music for when people are not talking,
right?
And it's like putting thoughts in their heads.
You're creating feeling for us in some ways.
Yeah.
If we're unsure of what to feel.
Yeah. So occasionally I'll use the blood theme when, he's thinking about killing.
Good.
Talking about killing anytime,
So you use it a lot.
I use it a lot, yeah. The low strings.
Right.
And piano. I use a lot of piano. And harps.
And that's become so iconic. That sound there has become so iconic for Dexter.
Yeah.
People know exactly what this is. There's ringtones of this.
Yeah.
I've been in grocery stores. I've been walking down an aisle and suddenly heard this.
Oh, seriously?
And it's their phone.
That's so funny. I have not experienced that
One day you will too.
yet. Okay. So anyways,
Yeah.
so that's high strings played with harmonic. So it's people say, "What is that synth sound?" It's actually not a synth sound. It's just viola played in a kind of unique sliding way with harmonics for the musicians out there.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So then this season, we've got sort of a bunch of new characters.
Yeah.
I was wondering if we could hear. So.
Spoiler alert.
Well, no. So up to this point, people have seen episodes 1 through 5.
Right.
So I feel like all of the major characters have been introduced. So I think
That's
it'd be
true.
interesting for us to hear, Hannah's theme.
Yeah.
Do you have that handy?
I do.
Okay.
Well, I don't know about handy, but I have it here somewhere. Hold on a sec. So Hannah's theme kind of changes a little bit. Boy, I have to be careful.
Well, let's just talk about if you have something from episode 5.
5. Well, I have something from episode 3 when we
Okay, that's
when
great.
we first meet her.
That's in the greenhouse, right?
It's in the greenhouse, yeah. So, it's as close to a Dexter and Love theme that I think you were going to ever get to.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
He definitely has some good feelings for her when he's in there.
But it's very
He drops his swab.
He drops his exactly.
You know that's love.
You know it's love when you drop your swab.
It's just a little sad too.
Yeah, it's a little sad too.
Yeah. So, what about this music? Why this music for Hannah? It's beautiful, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, you want to kind of sympathize. I mean, when we met her, we sort of don't want to give away that she's a killer. So far through this season, the Hannah themes have been. I've really had to tiptoe a little bit.
Sure.
Because you can't throw it one way or the other too much, because it kind of goes between him actually. Well,
do you take into account Dexter's feelings?
Sure, absolutely. This was through his point of view.
Okay, that's interesting, right?
This scene, almost always, the music is his point of view.
Wow, I never even thought of that until just now. That's interesting.
Well, I mean, and that's because the show is his point of view. He comments on it's him talking through the whole show, so he's kind of filtering. Most scenes.
Yeah.
So the music also is from his point of view as well.
Which brings us to Isaac, the Ukrainian gangster, who's a big bad for this season. Episode 5, Dexter and Isaac finally get eyes on each other over a phone call and some coffee. Mm-hmm. So do you want to play some of the Isaac theme that happens? I mean, it starts at the very beginning, right? Episode 1, we see Isaac sticking around with somebody, and then
you really his theme really gets developed in episode 2.
What does that mean? It gets developed.
Well, it's full on. Like okay, this is.
Like you get little clues of him at the beginning.
Yeah,
and
you
then,
start off with little snippets.
Which is what you do with Hannah too, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes you introduce the theme a little bit at a time, and then you spell it out as you get.
So things unfold.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm going to just play something from the second episode where we've. Really, his theme is starting to unfold. We're starting to know who he is a little bit better.
It's always sort of variation on this point for Isaac for the rest of the season, basically.
Generally,
yeah.
Generally, not. Sometimes if it's not right for a scene, I won't use it. But whenever it's appropriate, I use it.
Okay.
And so what I did with Isaac is, since he's such a classy guy, I used a solo cello.
Okay.
With this kind of driving piano, kind of slow driving piano, plotting, not plodding, plotting.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah. Because he's just methodical, I think of him as a methodical killer.
And scary.
Scary.
But you still sort of want to hang out with the guy.
Yeah, as long as there's no tools nearby.
That's right. Keep away from the screwdrivers.
All right,
let's hear this. Yeah.
Here it goes.
Sort of a little bit of a Eastern European feel to that a little bit, huh? Or no?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I added a little clarinet in there too.
Yeah.
A little bit of
The Russian.
a little Russian aspect. I didn't want to go too over.
Not too much.
Yeah.
Then, who else do we got? We have Hannah, Isaac, and Deborah has a theme, I imagine.
Yeah, well, Deborah's theme kind of started early. I'll go back to the first season.
Okay.
Where her theme first came in.
Because Deborah's gone through a lot. The end of season 6 into season 7. All these revelations about Dexter.
Okay. So Deborah loves Rudy.
Okay, I remember Rudy.
Otherwise known as the Ice Truck.
Killer. It's a little sad too.
Yes.
It's like a doomed sort of feel.
Well, you
to
guys keep doing stuff to her. What do you expect?
This is the early days. So you're saying that this sort of song, not this song, this piece, is sort of the core of Dexter all through all the seasons. This theme, I guess, for Deborah, more or less.
Yeah, and and sometimes it gets used by other people too. So it's not. The themes are not always like so.
It's not set in stone.
Set in stone. They're more like moods that happen throughout.
Right.
But this was first her theme, and then so I brought it back. I actually brought it back in one of the later seasons. This theme, when she was confronted by Sergeant Matthews,
right,
saying, "Tough luck. This is the way it works."
Oh, we're going to bring this into episode 5, aren't we? This is great.
Yeah.
Keep going. Yeah, this is awesome.
So then I brought that same arrangement back into this episode.
Well, let's talk. The scene you're talking about is when she was talking with Matthews, and Matthews sort of gave her a talking to, I guess.
Basically, like saying, "I know it's not right, but this is kind of the way it goes, and
Right.
there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it."
Right.
So she's like, "This sucks."
Right. She had to eat that and realize it was sort of a growing point for her too, that this is also part of being a police.
Yeah.
Because everything's so black and white with her.
Yeah. So then the same situation happens in episode 5.
Right.
And so I brought back the same theme, except for she's on this other side of the table this time.
Because this time she's playing Matthews in some ways, right? You're talking about the scene when she talks with Batista.
She tells Batista that...
And Batista believes Mike Anderson was killed by somebody else.
Yeah.
This bartender business is a lot of bull.
Yeah.
And she has to shut it down because she knows the truth is...
Well, she's basically saying to Batista, we have a murder solved on our board.
Right.
Which is exactly what upset her so much in the previous episodes.
Yeah.
It's like, just because we have a murder solved, that doesn't mean we have the murderer.
Well, it was actually a half-truth it was a half-truth. She said, Mike Anderson's killer is dead.
Right. That's true.
And the truth was, it was Victor, right?
Right,
And
yeah.
Dexter killed Victor. So she's able to tell sort of a half-truth, and she's not comfortable with it. So,
Right.
So you played this theme for it?
So, different variation on that theme. And, give me a second to find it. Here we go.
Let it go.
So this is kind of a more of a cop thriller version of the theme. Hard-edged cop version. So it's more electronica sound.
Yeah.
So this is like where she's telling Batista, like...
We're both sitting in here bobbing our heads to this.
Let it go, Batista. We have this murder solved.
And it's sad though too. Like a piece of her died when she had to tell Batista this. Because after this, she went to Dexter and said, "I can't do this for you anymore."
So it's the same theme.
Yeah. Oh, listen to that.
It's more like bourbon bluesy sound.
Yeah. Up and walked out.
Yeah.
And Deb felt like crap.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. That's great.
Thank you.
So that's our. That's all the major character themes for this season, right?
Yeah, so far
through episode 5. I bet there's some people out there who would like to hear some of the other themes. Maybe we could. The scariest guy, one of the scariest guys ever, that I think you made even scarier, was John Lithgow as the Trinity killer. Do you have? You want to talk about Trinity a little bit and the music that you had for that?
Yeah, the fourth season was really kind of insistent and, well, what's the word? It was just sort of like
awesome.
It was it was awesome. It was a great episode. I mean, it was a great season, the season was driving and had the music. There was a lot more music in the fourth season. It was just sort of like it was playing tension and like it was like a machine that was going. That was sort of like Trinity was this machine that just.
Very scary machine.
Very scary machine, but really could not be phased or stopped.
Yeah.
You know? He really was. He was like I don't know. He's just like a robot shark or something. You know?
Because he was driven by these dark secrets and dark needs, and he felt like he had no choice. Yeah. That's amazing. So you had some.
So I used some. Let's see. Let me find. So I had the music I used was just kind of insistent driving music, you know.
Okay.
Let's see. Here we go. This is. Although there was I did have an interesting problem to solve, and I'll get to that afterwards about a love theme for
Trinity.
For Trinity and his wife. That was kind of interesting nut to crack. But this is the Trinity. The basic Trinity vibe is this kind of like it's just a pounding. It's like it's just whacking a piano, bells, these scary voices.
Already, I'm afraid to get in the bathtub hearing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see the driving feel to this thing.
You got the feeling that Dexter wasn't going to get out of this one.
Yeah. Yeah, it really makes you feel on edge.
Yeah. So that's, so thematically it's more textural than, there's themes that you hear like a weird viola playing.
Yeah.
It's really more textural sounds that made up this theme, these voices and driving and the ticking sound.
Right.
So
that's season 4.
Season 4.
5.
Season 5.
We had Lumen.
Lumen, who was a different kind of, well, she was a love, kind of a love interest, but
sort of, but
also season 5 was very different in that I wrote some pastoral music.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
what does that mean?
It had like winds in it.
Oh, okay.
And I actually had people comment to me like, "Wow, this music is very different."
Yeah.
It is very different from anything you heard in Dexter. So, let's see. So this kind of stuff, kind of soft.
Yeah. Sounds sort of damaged a little bit.
Yeah.
To me. Let's see. Who else would be another good one? It'd be what about Miguel?
Season 3.
I bet it felt a little Latin, if I remember correctly.
It had a guitar in it. It's true.
Because Miguel being an assistant prosecutor.
So this is Miguel's theme. Because he was also kind of introspective and
sort of grew to be a bad guy. In
Yeah.
the beginning, he was sort of born out of this tragedy of his brother dying, and then that overwhelmed him meeting Dexter.
Yeah.
Dexter's got away with people.
Yes, he does. I also tried to get sort of this kind of proud
Yeah.
Spanish feeling to it a little bit. Because he did start from a good place, kind of, and just went wrong.
Very. Started killing lawyers. So then, you know,
Well, there's...
Rudy, the ice truck killer.
Oh, yes. Oh, do I have the ice truck here? Oh, boy.
What's fun about the ice truck killer? Season 1, there's a point in the that I feel like you did in the music, and maybe I'm wrong, but there's a point in season 1 when we as viewers aren't exactly sure if Dexter is maybe going a little crazy, right? Is Dexter the one that's making these kills? Just a slight feel of that, you know?
In season 1, if...
That whether the ice truck killer or is maybe Dexter having a psychotic break and doing these kills.
Right, yeah.
You know?
And that's something that's
a reflection
that
of
Rudy
him in
was
some
doing
way.
purposely.
Yes, exactly.
With Dexter.
Yeah.
So this is the ice truck killer theme.
Okay.
You actually hear how it's actually related to Dexter's theme.
Yeah.
In certain
It's like
ways.
they're brothers.
It's like they're brothers or something. Amazing. But because it has the hand percussion, but it's got some weird sound to it.
Yeah. That's a synthesizer something. Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah. So in general, I've mixed in some electronic sounds into Dexter, some ambient sounds, some acoustic sounds.
Yeah.
I really try to keep a really wide palette of sounds. But what I don't generally do is do huge orchestral sounds. Occasionally I do orchestral.
It's sort of a smaller show, though. It fits
Yeah.
for Dexter. He's very personal and sort of alone in a lot of this.
Yeah, it's intimate, definitely.
Yeah.
But that is contrasted, though, with season 6.
Right. Season 6 with the Doomsday Killers. All connected up to God and that sort of, I don't know, slightly Catholic big room churches sort of feel, right?
Yeah, let me see if I can find one. A good one. Sorry.
And you had a tough time with that, too, because you don't want the music to give away the big secret that Travis and Geller, sorry, spoiler alert, but Travis and Geller are one and the same.
That is true.
Did you have to take that into account when you were creating that, or you
Well,
didn't even know? I don't. Think
I
they
actually
told you.
don't. I want to be surprised. I want to. I want to be objective about it because really the composer and the sound effects people are the last people on the bus, basically.
Okay.
Like the writers, the directors, the editors, the producers. They all have seen. They've seen these scripts from beginning to end.
Right.
So, I like to be objective, and then I can see what's actually there, and sort of say, this needs a little more of this.
Right.
You know,
Right. Oh yeah.
I can
That's
kind of
interesting.
do the final shaping, push it a little this way. It's like that wasn't clear to me. How can I make it a little clearer?
Right.
You know.
Very fresh eyes too, which is good.
Yeah. But I'm always going to ask the showrunner, like, I want to get an idea of where we're going because I don't want to like miss the boat either.
Right.
So I'll say like, what's coming up in terms of this relationship with this person?
Right.
So I know what the overall direction is going to be.
Yeah, it's very important when you see Hannah, and I think she's in episode 2, to know what's going to happen with Hannah. Yeah.
Right.
That
You
makes
need
sense.
to know who's an important character and who's
Yeah.
not an important character.
Yeah.
You know.
So this is the Doomsday. This is Doomsday Killer, Travis and Geller.
Yeah. Trying to find it. Give me 1 second here.
I feel like the big moment that I remember was when the dummy was on the horse and it came galloping toward us.
This is kind of the theme.
Okay.
I used.
Oh, you used like church?
I did.
Haunted house church organ.
I did. with kind of Greek or Gothic sounding choir sounds as well. So it's very different.
Yeah, it's much bigger.
Yeah.
But there's still that sort of slight Dexter. You hear Dexter a little bit in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Uh-oh, what's going to happen? I think the horses are running down the street right now.
Yeah, we're coming up to it. Anyways, so that was the kind of the Geller sound.
So it's interesting that
the Travis Geller sound.
Yeah.
Right?
But as a composer, in some ways, you have just as much responsibility to help us as viewers to understand who the characters are, as much as the writers are, and as much as the actor does. You shape it a lot. As you'd said earlier, you'd said something about if you'd played John Lithgow with spaghetti western music, it might have been a very different experience.
Yeah, exactly. People would have thought they were watching Third Rock.
Which would have been different. It would have
been different, but not quite the intended effect.
Well, hey, thank you so much for walking us through all of this stuff.
Sure.
It's amazing, and I think it'll be fun for people now to identify all the different themes as the season goes along.
Yeah, hopefully this will lead to enjoyment of the
greater enjoyment.
Greater enjoyment of the season.
All right, thanks a lot. This is Dan Licht in the house, composer for Dexter all 7 years.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep. Thanks for letting us in your house too. It's a great place.
Thank you.
We're actually, we didn't mention this. We're in the studio house of Dan Licht. You do all your music at home.
I do all. Well, no, I go to bigger studios sometimes to record with the orchestra. But yeah, okay. I do all the music here. I've got a little recording room, and I've got instruments surrounded by instruments.
They're everywhere.
We'll try and paint a mental picture for you listeners. I've got like vibes here that I like to play with bows, and
that's the thing that's in the picture of the podcast.
I got a didgeridoo leaning against that wall. I got a double bass in the room over there. I have some Chinese instruments on the walls, and when I'm writing, I'll just look around, and sometimes I'll just go in the back room and I'll go, what's the weirdest sound I can come up with right now? But it has to be right,
Yeah.
Like on this season, I started using some didgeridoo on
for who, or for
where did I use it?
Is it some of the no? It wouldn't be the Colombian stuff.
No, it was actually about it was when Dexter was when Dexter kind of freaked out
with his sister when his sister found out, or was it when he was pinning Lewis up against the wall? Or
let me take a look.
It's okay. We should.
No, it's when he put the guy into the. Has that happened yet? Wait, with the
who knows?
Oh, no.
Yeah,
plug your ears, everybody.
No.
With the fire.
Just listen for some didgeridoo.
Listen for didgeridoo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was kind of like Dexter coming unglued sound.
Yeah.
So listen for that.
Australians equal unglued in your world. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. It's all that beer they're drinking.
That's right. Good day, mate. All right. Thanks a lot,
right.
and we'll see you around.
All right. Thanks.
And here we are, sitting here with Wendy West.
Hello, Scott.
Hello, Wendy West. Mm-hmm. And Scott Buck.
Hello, everybody.
Are you guys both executive producers? How does this work right now?
I think so.
Is that how that works?
I have no idea.
You have no idea. They are.
We just
I'm
show
not.
up and do our work.
And it's a good time, this work.
Yeah.
We should talk to you a little bit, Wendy West. Huh? What do you think? Because a lot of people may or may not know who you are.
Okay.
Because you come from crime roots.
I do.
Right?
I do.
Daughter of an actual serial killer.
I don't like to talk about that very much.
Okay, all right. We won't talk about that. I met you for the first time. She's not really the daughter of a serial killer. Let's make that clear. As far as we know.
As far as we know.
You've been on Dexter since season
4.
Mm-hmm. And I actually met you just before that during the writer's strike at the Griffin in Las Vegas, and you were like the biggest fan of Dexter.
Biggest nerd.
But you were like 1,000 questions.
Yeah.
But you've been working on crime shows forever, right?
For a while, yeah.
Like what?
I worked on The Closer, which was really fun.
Which, when I first saw that commercial, I thought it was, it didn't say The Closer. I thought it was The Closer.
You're not alone. Kira's dad always said the same thing.
The Closer. Closer to
that
what?
show? Yeah.
Oh, it's The Closer. Okay. Sorry, I get it.
And I worked on Law and Order, SVU, for a good while.
Special Victims Unit.
They're very special.
That's a lot of horrible crime on that show.
Yeah, it's true.
You're very familiar. You like horrible crime.
I don't know why or how this happened, but
You're drawn to it, though, huh?
To be doing it. Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
I guess once you've told a story that has those kinds of stakes, it's hard to
go
tell
to
a
like,
different kind of story.
It's like something that's Gossip Girl
It's
or
like,
something.
oh yeah, you're in love. Oh yeah, well you're gonna die. So, like love hard,
It's
live
hard
hard.
to step back.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I actually, back before I started on Dexter too, I was a huge Scott Buck fan.
Right.
He had written this episode, people may or may not know, of 6 Feet Under called "That's My Dog."
Oh yeah.
And it's this tremendous episode where David, played by Michael, gets carjacked and has this crazy adventure, and it's just a remarkable episode of television. And I remember calling my agent and saying, "Who the heck is Scott Buck?"
Just happened to be my agent.
It's true, but I didn't know that at the time. I never ever thought I'd be so lucky to get to work with both of you.
Well, Scott Buck's amazing.
It's really lovely. Yeah.
There's a theory on the interwebs and among other actors, I guess, on the show that every episode that you write, you try to put Michael C. Hall into a van ever since that episode. And if you watch, it's sort of true. You're always putting him in a van.
Now I'm going to start trying to do that. For many, many years, I tried to put a monkey in every episode, but that was when I was working in sitcoms. And once I was in dramas, it was a little more difficult.
It's hard. We could maybe
Season
have like
8, Year of the Monkey.
like a man pansy that is on the hunt, and Dexter has no idea. I've never seen prints like these before.
Done.
Well, let's talk about this episode
Great.
at hand.
Great.
704, written by Wendy West. Run. Yeah. It was quite a journey we had writing this episode.
Yeah.
Or you had writing this episode.
Yeah, I went through several different drafts, several different incarnations, and then we ended up here.
Yeah.
And it was a fun journey, I guess.
It was. Yeah, it's a fun show to work on.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, here's some questions people have for you
Okay.
guys. Ready? Gracie on Twitter has this question. Dex says he genuinely loves Deb and Harrison and loved Rita. Remember that moment?
Yes.
Now, some viewers, apparently, according to Gracie on Twitter, some viewers say he's lying, and Gracie is convinced that he's authentic and telling the truth. So what do you, the writers, believe?
I believe he believes he loves them in the way that Dexter can love somebody, which might, love might mean something a little different to everybody. But as far as Dexter goes, I think he genuinely believes he loves them. And who would we be to contradict that?
Yeah. Just because you're a sociopath doesn't mean you're not incapable of some form of that love thing. Charlotte on Facebook asks, "Aw, Dexter let go of his trophies. Now what?"
No trophies.
You want to talk about that process of that? This was a big deal when we decided that Dexter was no longer going to collect these things. I mean, this is some people might call iconic.
I think we would. It was a very natural progression for Dexter as we see him grow up throughout the seasons, and the trophies always felt like toys, little boyish possessions of his. They were exactly that, trophies, and it was just time for him to put that behind, take a step forward, grow up a little.
And they came with such a high degree of risk. I think when he realized LaGuardia might have his blood slide, it's a chance he can't risk ever taking again.
So it was a little bit of he didn't want to get caught, and he sort of grew past this a little bit. And I think Deb also, when Deb compared him to Speltzer, that was a little. You could tell he was a little angry.
And there's something that the fact that Deb knows about them that makes them less special.
Yeah.
I think too, and I think that made them, slightly less appealing potentially for him.
But also not just less special, but forced him to, I think, look at it for what they were, which is this thing that he'd carried along with him ever since he was a young man. And it was finally time to looking at it through someone else's eyes made it seem a little bit childish, I think.
Trisha on Facebook asks, "Is Dexter or anyone else is Dexter or anyone else ever going to discover Lewis dead on his boat? Did the mob just leave
That's
Lewis
a question
there?"
for Scott Reynolds.
Right. I mean, we're going to find out, right? This is one of those.
Yeah, and in what episode?
Episode 5.
Who wrote that?
Scott Reynolds.
There you go.
It's coming up. But in the episode where Lewis is killed, Isaac very clearly says, "Get rid of the body."
Get rid of it.
Yeah.
So, Lende, I think Lende. Lendy.
Okay.
Lend?
Sounds like Lundy.
It could be Lundy,
Could
but
be.
it's not. Lendy on Facebook asks, "Okay, we all know how Deb feels about Dexter, but are the feelings reciprocated? Dexter's hard to read." And I think they're talking about this not necessarily romantic love, but this thing that Deborah has for Dexter.
Dexter genuinely loves his sister, but I don't think he harbors any romantic feelings for her.
Yeah,
No.
that's like foreign to him.
Yeah.
That could
I mean,
be-
he says so clearly in the pilot, if he could love anyone, it would be Deborah. So,
right. All right, Wendy, this is a good question for you.
okay.
Rick on Facebook asks.
Hello, Rick.
He's like, "Oh, she said hi to me." He asks, "How detailed are the fight scenes, specifically the one in the RV from last night in the script?" So you wrote,
Yeah, I mean, we definitely try to outline the action as much as possible, and we have a fantastic stunt coordinator, Wally.
Right.
I think part of Wally is animatronic. He's been through so many, Wally Crowder, he's been through so many adventures of his own, a long, good history of, incredible stunt work. And he and Michael worked together to then make the most dynamic action possible. And the interesting thing is we shot this actually on that tight Winnebago set.
a tiny little thing,
It was
right?
teeny,
Yeah.
and our Eric Fletcher, our great camera guy, is
Quick pause, real quick.
Yeah.
Was that
Yeah.
actually inside a Winnebago, or was that a
yeah.
set?
It was. We drove one onto the set, but we
Okay.
didn't, break it apart and all to make it easier to shoot. We,
Right.
kept it at its actual dimensions and then piled everyone inside. And it was so hot, and everyone is just like dripping in sweat. And I think the great thing also about the way John Dahl shot it is that he wanted to keep the eye lines really tight and the action coming at the camera. And that's something that Wally, Eric, and Michael and
Eric Fletcher, the cameraman.
Eric Fletcher. And it's fun to stand back and watch them work because he's moving right along with them. And there's a part where Michael falls back onto the bed and Eric falls back and then gets up and goes with
Yeah.
them. And I think that's part of what makes the sequence so, exciting to watch. And, we had a fantastic editor, Lewis.
Jaffe.
God bless him, editing this episode too. And he just, did his usual fantastic job.
So it's so in other words, you're not writing like Dexter takes his elbow and crushes it into his head.
Kind
or-
of
little
are.
bit?
Yeah, I mean, like we definitely have the table scripted.
Right.
Often we'll write a draft, we'll see what the location is going to end up being, and then rewrite it specifically to that.
Right.
But always leaving room for whatever works best for the actors too,
Right.
to make
Discovery.
it their own
Yeah.
and discover it and make it as dynamic as possible.
Yeah, and it was. That was a good fight. I would not want to fight that Minotaur.
Yeah, whatever.
Kyle on Facebook asks, "How did Isaac get the gun that killed Mike?" We know how.
From
right?
Victor's car at the airport.
Right.
He sent Jurg to go continue the cleanup job, and Jurg recovered the car, and the gun was in the car.
Right. Charles on Facebook asks, "Did the writers ever think about Dexter not killing Speltzer, the Minotaur guy, before placing him in the crematory oven? This guy thought for sure Dexter was going to burn him alive, but then he stabbed him in the heart like a vampire."
We did actually consider that, but Dexter is not cruel. He kills people quickly, instantly. He's not into causing pain or torture.
Right. Burning alive, that's a little painful.
Might hurt a little.
Might hurt.
Not
Valeria on Facebook asks, "Is Dexter recruiting Deb?"
At this moment, no.
Right.
I think at this moment he's just looking for his own, new terra firma. But who knows what will happen next?
I think he's the only way in which he is trying to recruit her is recruiting her into believing that what he does is okay.
Right.
And some degree of acceptance, as much as
Yes.
he can hope for from her. That's his primary goal at this point.
Yeah,
in
that
the
was
story.
that was an amazing moment in the episode before this when
Yeah.
Dexter clocks the Minotaur or Speltzer. He goes down, and there's a woman somewhere in this place. He checks his sister, but the first thing he says to his sister is like, "See, look, I'm right. I'm right." And he's got this. Look at I can do this, right? Perry on Twitter asks. This is a line from your script, Wendy. "Time for everyone to move on. Goodbye, friends." This is when Dexter's burning his slides. Is this Dexter realizing his commonality to the people he has killed?
No, I don't think so. I think it's saying goodbye to this chapter of his life.
Memories.
But his playthings as well.
Yeah.
And his playthings, yeah.
Well, hey, man, thank you guys so much for doing this. A lot of good questions this week.
Yeah.
You guys are
Fun.
studs for coming in like this.
And
so
you.
And
so
you.
early in the morning.
You, podcast king.
Well, there it is. This is the end of the fifth Dexter wrap-up podcast. Now, if you have some questions after watching episode 705, Swim Deep, you can have a chance.
Written by?
Yeah, you can have a chance to get them answered by Scott Buck and me, the writer of that episode. So bring your questions. Grill me. Let's do this thing. We're ready. You may wonder how you get your questions answered on this podcast. Well, you go to facebook.com/Dexter, and you can post up your questions there. Or if you're into tweeting, I've been told by someone said, you can't say twittering. It's tweeting. I think it was
Tweeting.
Yeah. So if you're into tweeting, personally, I like twittering. If you're twittering people, it sounds
Tweeting.
Sorry. Okay. If you're into tweeting people, then hit us up at twitter.com/SHO_Dexter. But make sure you hashtag that question with hashtag Dexter Wrap Up. But you better do it before Monday night because we compile these questions on Monday night, pick the best of the bunch, and then ask away on the podcast. I want to thank Daniel Licht for bringing us behind the scenes on what being a composer is all about. This guy's done it all. This guy's movies, video games, 7 seasons of Dexter. 7 seasons of Dexter.
So good. So talented.
Now you can watch and listen to the episodes in a whole new way. Like, go back and look at them. Identifying character themes, listening as they morph and change, listening to how... You guys notice that every character theme has the Dexter theme hidden in it somewhere.
Wow.
That's
cool.
like how he sort of designed that. It's pretty cool. Let's give a big hooray for Rob Galuzzo, a.k.a. Rob G., the producer, sound engineer for the podcast. I'm Scott Reynolds. I'm one of the writers here on the show. You can find me at Twitter at JScottAmy, JSCOTTAMY.
The invaluable Scott Reynolds.
That's right. I tweets like there's no tomorrow. Maybe I'll ingrace you all with some behind-the-scenes pictures or two throughout the rest of the season or something. It'd be fun to look at,
Cool.
right? We're going to post a picture of this. Oh, probably before this or after this. I don't know. So catch us next week when our guest will be Yvonne Strahovski. It's Hannah. And she's not from around here, so this will be one of those rare treats when you get to hear her real accent.
Yeah.
She rarely ever does that. She breaks down Hannah and Dexter and Deborah. Holy crap, it's good. You don't want to miss this one. Seriously, you don't want to miss this one. The kids at school will be talking about it in the morning, and you don't want to be all like, what are they talking about? How come I don't know what this is? So you better listen.
Do I have to go back to school?
You're in school every day.
It's true. True.
Well,
that.
that's it. That's the end. But don't worry. It's going to happen again and again. It has to happen. Have a good week.